Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the fourth technology vendor that we're talking with today, brought to you by the IIAN Technology Group. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our webinar today. Joining us today is Justin Goodman. He is the president of Total CSR. This is an outstanding piece of software that we've got great reviews on from several of our members that are already using their product. So very excited to have Justin join us today. And Justin, I'll let you go ahead and kick it off.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate the time. I will try and make it fruitful for everyone. A little bit of background on myself and our company. I am an agent, most like all of you, and I'm third generation in the business. My grandfather was in it. My father was in the business. And when I was 18 years old, he had said to me, "Hey, Justin, you want to come into this business?" And I said, "No, there's no chance in heck I'm doing that." And so he sold his retail and wholesale operation to Arthur J. Gallagher. And then about, 4 years later, I was selling shipping supplies for a Uline shipping company and met a and I decided, hey, I'm going to try and give insurance an opportunity. So I went to work for Arthur J. Gallagher. During my time there, I sold insurance to contractors, specifically trade contractors in the state of California. I ended up taking over their construction division and then managing their small business units. We were the first company to develop and distribute small business units throughout the country. I was in charge of that product. And as well as the outsourcing initiative within Arthur J. Gallagher. At the time, I was part of that initial team involved in that process. And so I've got a lot of backgrounds on the operation side, the training side. I still have my own retail agency. We had bought ourselves back from Arthur J. Gallagher back in 2008. And that's where this product was really born out of, the need for a small boutique agency to train its own staff. For years, we've leveraged the CIC program, the CISR program through the National Alliance, the institutes in their programming to train on the coverage side, but the practical side was what was lacking. We really didn't have the ability to train in the way that was going to be relevant to our business and have somebody from day one contribute. So what you're going to see, this program was born out of our need to really train in-house someone from scratch. Now, as I'm going, if you do have questions, you can also type them in the chat message, and I'll make sure I get to them. I'm going to walk you through a couple things. I'm going to walk you through our commercial lines program, and we also launch personal lines starting tomorrow. So I will show you some of that program. Sometimes people say, hey, in these larger group demos, there's just, I want to see more of this program versus, hey, in a group setting where I can ask more questions. If after this you want to see a more in-depth demo on your own, you can go to our website, totalcsr.com, go to the demo page, and select a demo time where one of our salespeople will sit one-on-one with you for a half hour, 45 minutes, and show you exactly every part of our platform. They have a good idea if it's a good fit for your organization. I'll try and accomplish that here in a group setting, but I understand getting to many different questions can be difficult for people. So with that said, where we are today, we have commercial lines training, soft skills training, and we just launched personal lines training. We launched producer training in July, which will focus on tactics for getting new business, not so much coverage. And so we continue this development roadmap. A couple things before I jump in. People ask, are you a competitor to the National Alliance, the CIC program, et cetera? We are not. In fact, we do teach coverage, but we teach the basics, and you will see that it is the basics. If I'm going to give you a comparison of what we are compared to a National Alliance program, we're not the CIC coverage. We're not even the CISR. We're really a Cliff Notes version of the CISR. So what we're designed to do is really teach the practical. We wanted to make sure that new people within the industry weren't overwhelmed with information on a coverage side because there's so much to learn on the process side when you first come into our business. And so that's what we'll keep the focus on, and you'll see that throughout our programming. All that to say, I'll jump in and show you our program now. The first thing I always show in our demos is the My Agency page. This is for the administrator in your company, and what you can see is we have the names of the users, their email, and what courses they're currently going through, and you can track the progress of said users. We also make it easy to add new users. We want this to be plug and play for agencies. So to add a new user, all you have to do is select first name, last name, email address, and which courses you want them enrolled for. And there's a structured and unstructured learning. Structured learning is they will take the course material in the order we select. Unstructured learning is in the order that you as an administrator would like them to take the course. For example, you may have a new person who's going to do nothing but commercial auto. And so you don't want them to go through workers' comp, GL, property, inland marine before they get to auto. You want them to start there because that's where they're going to be deployable within the agency the quickest. So we have that option, and that's controlled by the administrator. The next thing you'll see is the My CSR page. And on the My CSR page, this is where your individual user going through the program can see their courses. As I mentioned, we have soft skills where we teach on generation gaps, business writing for insurance, telephone etiquette, working with difficult customers, and leadership. So we go through all of that in our soft skills course. Commercial lines, we're going to cover general education, workers' comp, GL, auto, excess, property, and inland marine. Down the line, we will expand into other coverage lines, but that's what we're sticking with in the beginning. And then briefly pointing out personal lines, what you'll see today is a glimpse of homeowners and personal auto, but we are going to get into flood, quake, and some wind, et cetera, in our program, but I'll be able to show you just today the homeowners and the personal auto side. So to start off, I'm going to dive in to our coursework. General education, really what we're doing in the general education coursework is showing you how to do a couple things. One, and my computer is suddenly slow, is an overview on the Accord 125 and learning how to complete this 125 form. So in general ed, you're going to learn how to complete the Accord 125 form and have scenarios attached. We're also going to teach you how to complete certificates. We want them to learn how to review a contract, complete certificates, and get that down when we have scenarios associated with that. That will make much more sense after I show you an actual coverage course. So we'll start with like workers' compensation. When we go into a course, we always have a 1 to 2 minute intro video. You won't hear the audio in this, but you'll get an idea of what we're trying to accomplish. We are trying to, in our 1 to 2 minute video, encapsulate what it is that this coverage is trying to do. For example, I, as an agency owner, always cringe when my staff would try and explain a coverage line and take 5 to 10 minutes and ramble doing that. What we're trying to do is give them a way they can simply explain this coverage line to an insured. So we give a little history behind the situation, why this coverage was needed, and how it actually applies to the insured, and a typical claims example. We do that in 1 to 2 minutes. And if you said, hey, I actually want to see what these videos with the audio are, you can just type in Total CSR into YouTube and find our channel. We post these videos for free just so that you have a reference point. The next thing you'll see is we go into our coverage overview. Again, this is a Cliff Notes version, but we will show the interactions and how coverage is going to apply in different states. We are going to go through the policy form. We are going to go through limits, common endorsements. We want them to see what a waiver or subrogation is. We want them to see samples of the forms, the difference between a blanket waiver and a scheduled waiver. We want them to understand that there's exclusions, and we go through that. But we're quickly going to pivot to this concept of a CSR support cycle, where most of your CSRs, when they're new in the business, are going to spend their time is in these 8 steps. And they're going to get information from an insured. They have to complete the Accord form, send a submission, review quotes, do a proposal, bind coverage, check the policy, and then those activities that support the insured, i.e. certificates, dealing with audits on the auto side, endorsements, et cetera. So we want them to understand what they're going to be doing from a tactical perspective, and we teach to that. So we are going to put them through the exercise of doing all this. With workers' comp, the first thing we're going to do is get estimated payroll figures. But we have some terminology we're going to learn first. So we go through the terminology, and we quiz. They need 90% or better in each of our quizzes to keep progressing through the coursework. So we want them to retain this information. We're then going to show them how you could request this information from an insured, We're showing, hey, getting payroll figures is only one step in the process. After we do that, we want them to understand the concept of straight time wage, how to calculate straight time wage, and then we give a practical example. We explain remuneration versus payroll, what's included versus excluded, and we quiz on that as well. So again, all of our quizzes, you have to have 90% or better. We'll go into the concept of independent contractor versus employees. We do this so we can explain the concept of an employee in the context of workers' compensation. Every state has their respective statutes as it pertains to independent contractors, so you would have to explain the difference and how it applies in your state versus in California, because we have different rules in California. We'll go into supplemental applications, what a supplemental would look like, the types of questions that are typically going to be asked. We do a deep dive on loss runs. We want them to see what a loss run is, understand the concept of currently valued, and then learn the terminology. Terminology is huge for a new user. In workers' comp, for a loss run, you need to know 22 key terms to be able to explain that loss run. They'll learn this, and then they'll be quizzed on it. They will then go through a tutorial where we throw those key terms on a physical loss run, so they start to get some familiarity of, hey, this is where I might find the information on a loss run. But as you know, the loss runs aren't standardized. And so what we do is we quiz using different formats for loss runs. So you'll see a loss run here, and then we will ask a question about it. We will then go and change the format. So on the next go around, it looks a little different. We want them to practice here and make mistakes here so that they're not making those mistakes for you when they get in the agency. The next step in the process after they pass our quiz is we will give them an understanding of XMOD. We'll walk them through that in basics. We're not going to teach how to calculate it, but we want them to be able to use it within the context of the Accord form. Speaking of the Accord form, we're now going to give them a tutorial on how to complete an Accord form. Now, at this point, we typically get the question, well, we use an agency management system to populate onto the Accord form and create the document. And we teach to the Accord form because in all my discussions with all of the coverage experts and all the trainers, including people at the National Alliance, everyone agreed that we need to teach to the Accord form because over the life of a CSR, they may change multiple agency management systems, and the most correct way to learn is learn to the form, because then you can figure out the interface. But if you teach to the interface, they don't necessarily correlate that information to the actual Accord form. So we walk them through. They have to click through each of these little check boxes. They'll go through our tutorial. And then what we do is we have scenarios. We want them to practice the actual process. So what we do is we give them a scenario here with information in red is information that needs to be in the Accord form. So we give them a narrative, payroll figures, a supplemental application, and then 4 years of currently valued loss runs. They'll use that information to complete this Accord form. They'll do it to the best of their ability, but they typically struggle in the beginning. And when they struggle, all they have to do is hover over a section. It'll give them a tip on what goes in that area. After that, they will hit submit, and they will be graded in real time. Anything less than 95% accuracy, they will be kicked back to the previous screen. Mistakes highlighted in yellow, they will fix those mistakes and hit submit again. This is not attempted to be an immediate pass-fail. What we're trying to recreate is a mentor-mentee relationship similar to I had when my father taught me. He would say, okay, Justin, you're going to complete this Accord form. I'd go back to him and say, hey, Dad, here's what I did. He would mark it up and say, go back. You still have these mistakes figured out. And it may take 3 or 4 times, but I learned very well by going back and forth in that process. Once they pass scenario 1, scenario 2, 3, 4, and 5 will each unlock individually, which gives them 5 opportunities to practice completing an Accord form. What we have found based on all of our users is they develop competency usually by the 3rd time through, and a lot of them actually complain that the 5th time through is overkill, but I wanted 10, and so I'm sticking with the number 5 on this. So the next thing we'll show you is we have to send a submission out. Now there's various ways of sending submissions out. There's online rating systems, etc. We are going to speak to sending an email submission and showing them the types of documents that are going to be required in that submission. The next step in the process is we got to get a quote and review it. But to review a quote, we need to learn the terminology. So we walk them through all this terminology, and then we quiz them on that as well. Once we've quizzed them on that, and I'll just show you bear with me as I click through here. exactly what I mean by our quizzes is they will go here, and now they have to go through and correctly match the term with the coverage definition. After we've done that, we are going to then show them a tutorial where we again throw those key terms onto a physical quote. They get familiarity with them, but the same concept with this applies when we talk about reviewing quotes. The formatting is different depending on the carrier. So we change the format of the quotes 4 different ways to again get them familiar with this whole process, knowing that information will present itself differently, but the relevant information is all the same. The next step in the process is creating a proposal. All we're doing here is telling them, hey, this is what a proposal typically includes. We don't want to mess around with your agency's formatting or anything like that. So this is just a placeholder really to tell them this is the step in the process. We'll walk them through how to calculate net rates. We then go into binding coverage. We want them to see what a bind order includes. We want them to see a sample email to an underwriter to show that, hey, there's some thought process going through this. We'll go into policy checking. We'll show how to cross-reference documents, and then we will quiz them on it. So we're giving an opportunity to learn this policy checking process. And then in supporting the insured, not every insured's on fixed installments. Some have monthly payroll reports, and if our insured has to complete it, we need to be able to explain it. So we go through that. We walk them through the claims process. We go into calculating a short rate penalty. We deal with final audits. We want them to see a sample work comp final audit. We want them to see the difference between a voluntary audit and a physical audit and what's required of both. And then possible situations when an insured disagrees with an outcome, when they don't comply with an audit, what's going to happen. And then we have the common mistakes that we see. And what we really want is the CSR to front load prior to the audit, talk to the insured and say, hey, let's make sure we have this right, because once the toothpaste is out of the tube, we can't put it back in. So we have a lot of our users who actually copy and paste this and just send it out to their insured. It's been helpful in avoiding some common audit issues. After that, we give some E&O prevention tips and have a final exam. They pass with 90% or better, they will move on to our next module. I'm briefly going to jump into the GL just so you can get an idea of how we do it on a different coverage line. All the same things apply though. We're going to go through the coverage form with terminology. We're going to understand who our insured is. We're going to speak to the endorsements. We want to understand how an endorsement is billed. So we want them to understand what the addition date is, and we walk them through those basics. We'll go through exclusions. And again, we have a CSR support cycle they're going to go through. We're going to walk them through, hey, this is how you're going to get information. And we'll walk them again through loss runs, which will look slightly different because some of the information presents itself in different, based on the type of claim, deductible, et cetera. So we want them to see how that's going to look differently on a GL loss run versus a work comp one. And again, they'll learn to complete the accord forms. We'll walk them through that, go through quote reviews. So we are repeating this process, but I wanted to show you it's a similar thought process for all lines of coverage. We're trying to really get them confident so they can be deployable within the agency and go from there. So that's the GL. It very much mimics our workers' comp side. Briefly, I'll show you our homeowners. This is brand spanking new. We just finished beta. And so what we're attempting to do in homeowners, again, is we start off with a video. We're going to explain what is homeowners insurance. We are then going to go into coverages. And we do a little more coverage knowledge here in homeowners because there's a few more moving parts that help a person through this process. So we will spend a little bit more time on personal lines going through this, teaching coverage. We use simple language. Who is provided coverage sounds a little wonky, but what we've had through all of our beta testing is a disconnect between some of the insurancees that we use in the agency side versus a new person coming into this industry. So if we are going to fall on one side of the line, we are going to dumb down the verbiage, which if you're talking to an expert may say, hey, it's not 1,000% accurate all the time, and you forgot about these rare examples. We're doing that intentionally. What we are trying to do is teach T-ball, and then they'll move on to AA and AAA and then majors. We don't want them playing with Major League Baseball rules in the beginning because that overwhelms them and that is not a recipe for success. So we'll talk about things that impact coverage. We'll go into endorsements that they're going to see. We'll go into exclusions. We'll talk about deductibles. We'll go into the CSR support cycle, which looks a little bit different. One of the things that's different with homeowners is, again, we're going to be dealing oftentimes with online raters. So we had to build a rater. And so we first say, hey, to get information, here's a homeowner's request form. So this is the information that we're going to need. And we have a tutorial there. We have a downloadable. Some people had requested, hey, Justin, we like how your form is. Can you just make it downloadable? So we did. That's free for our users to have. And then there are some website reports that we need. Replacement cost estimator, whether it's a clue report, fire risk score, et cetera. So we are going to walk them through what's being put in these reports and how it's going to be relevant to what you're doing when you're rating. So we walk them through all of that, and we have our comparative rater practice that's coming up. So what we will do is have our first scenario. And similar to what you saw in commercial lines, we're going to give a scenario document. So we have a narrative here. We have our application filled out, everything in red that's relevant. We actually have a replacement cost estimator in there. And then we've got a clue report. So we're just trying to provide relevant information so they can get a trial of what this is going to look like. And then we have our rater. So they will go through here, complete our rater, just like they would going through any other rater. Again, there are many different raters out there. And so we tried to create a hybrid to be as relevant to as many people as possible. The user will go through this whole process. They complete it. They get to the end, submit to carriers. They will be graded, be 95% or better. And then if they have mistakes, again, it's highlighted in yellow. They'll go back, fix their mistakes. So again, we're trying to give them practice in that whole process. And then we go to reviewing quotes. We want them to see what's relevant on a homeowner's quote. We want them to see, if we go down to parts of a policy with policy checking, we want them to understand how the policy looks different for homeowners than it does on a commercial CGL policy. So we'll walk them through that as well. We want them to understand basics of claims, what those common claims they're going to see are, processing binders. We want them to see what that's going to look like, dealing with cancellation notices. And then we have a final exam like we did with the others. So this is our coursework in general. Last but not least, I'll give you a little sample of what soft skills is. And again, for those of you who said, hey, I'd like to see in more detail, you can book a demo, and one of our sales team will go and sit with you for half hour, an hour, however long it takes for you to see everything that's relevant to your agency to make sure it is something you guys want to look into further. But we talk about, with soft skills, we've got business writing. So, come on, computer. When business writing, we are trying to give them relevant information. We talk about spelling, grammar, resources, like using Grammarly that everyone should be using. So we've got cheat sheets in there for grammar, dealing with constructing sentences. Believe it or not, there's a lot of this younger generation that's so used to texting that they aren't focused on structuring sentences properly. To the English majors out there, we apologize. You don't need to take this course, but we found this very helpful in teaching our team members how to write emails, some tips on what not to do, writing a risk narrative. We go into there and walking through that process. And then proofreading and finishing. So that's just an example of one of the soft skills we teach. Hopefully this has given you a highlight of what our course does. I am happy to take any questions you have, whether by chat or audio, to provide any further detail on what we do versus what we don't do. So Jeremiah, if you wanted to jump on and give any of your thoughts, questions, or if anyone in the audience does, I'm good to go answer away.
Yeah, no, thank you, Justin. I think what I'm going to do right now is go ahead and we attempted this last webinar to unmute all lines and things got messed up. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute all lines. Anybody that has us on hold or has a bunch of background noise, please go ahead and mute yourselves. But I'm going to click the unmute button here, and now you all on the line have control to unmute yourselves and ask any questions that you might have. I do see that we do have one question that came in, and Justin will just answer this one now while we're waiting for people to come in. And it says, do you have clients currently using your products that are willing to be referenced?
Can you repeat that? Do we have clients that are
currently using your products that are willing to be referenced?
So we do. Our issue, quite honestly, is everyone asks that question. So we have testimonials on the site because what ended up happening was we're happy. Like if you said, hey, if you'd email me a testimonial from my estate or give me a contact information from someone in my state, we're happy to do that. Our biggest concern is we've grown so much that we're trying to get in contact with these people ahead of time to get permission and try not to overburden them. So if one of you does have an interest in reaching out, you can shoot me an email and I'll get you a reference from somebody within your area that's using the product. And yeah.
Great. Also, another one came in online. It just says, I missed the beginning a little bit, but have we talked pricing at all yet?
Sure. So what I'll say is this, pricing is available on the website. And Jeremiah and I talked ahead of time. What we wanted to make sure is that this was an educational thing and did not come off as a sales pitch. Because I think that's what you guys are really exploring as, hey, is this something valuable to us? I'm happy to talk pricing more offline with anybody who has any more questions about how this works. But what I'll do just briefly is explain how our pricing model is different. And then again, you can hit me up offline if you've got further questions. But we are an active user-based subscription. And again, you'll find this all on our website. And so how we operate is you have, for our smallest package, 3 active users at any one time can be going through our coursework. So the best example I can give is Janie, Jack, and Jill are going through our coursework. Janie, Jack, and Jill all pass our coursework. You can remove them and add Phil, Tom, and Frank, and you're still at 3 active users. So our product is very competitively priced in that regard, and there are those that'll take more advantage of our system because they have more employees they're putting through on an annual basis. But for most people, even 3 active users can sometimes be overkill to what they need. It also comes with 1 administrator account, and that person also has access to go through the coursework. So again, if you have questions more on pricing and how this works, I want to be sensitive to not going into sales mode here. But you can email me at justin@totalcsr.com. Or call me, and Jeremiah can give you my contact information as well, so we can have an offline discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you. Once again, if you do have a question that you'd like to ask over the phone versus typing in the chat box, you can simply unmute your line on the toolbar, and then it will allow you to ask questions. So opening that up right now, Justin, those were the only 2 questions that came in online, so we'll give it 2 or 3 minutes, or actually not that long. Let's give it about 30 seconds if anybody wants to unmute and ask any questions. So we'll just be quiet here for a few. Oh, looks like we did have another question come in online. As you add parts as discussed, do those come with the same pricing package?
Okay, so Jeremiah, do you mind if I answer this question?
Yep, go right ahead. We had a long conversation about this morning, so.
Okay, so the reason I'm laughing is we are actually launching personal lines tomorrow, and the way our pricing model works is when you purchase prior to the launch of any subsequent product, you get all further products included at no additional cost. So today, you can buy the bundle of commercial lines and soft skills at $22.49, but tomorrow when we launch personal lines, to get personal lines and commercial lines and the soft skills, it's going to be $34.99. And so it's just coincidental that this is the day that our demo was. But yes, so anyone who buys, let's say if you bought May 15th and you bought it at $34.99, when we launch our producer training in July, you'll get that at no additional cost. And as we launch subsequent products after that, you'll continue to get all of those additional products at no additional cost included in your subscription program.
Fantastic. Well, Justin, I'm not seeing any more questions come in online, and it doesn't look like we've got anybody that's unmuted their lines from what I can tell on the screen here. So, oh, there's one more. If you buy the 1 admin and 3 users and pay annual, is the price $22.49 less the $1,100, or is the $1,100 saving already figured in?
That's already figured in. So if you were to buy monthly, you would see it being $33.49 for the year. So this is with the discount already figured in. So if you go to do the math, $279 times 12. So this is with the discount already included.
Thank you for that. I was starting to get nervous that there was 2 trains and they were traveling in the same direction, and I was going to get lost somewhere in the middle. So glad you tracked with that one, Jeff.
And let me just say this too, just as a point, we've had the discussion because we are a different animal, being a subscription service. And someone had asked us once before, and we decided to make a policy that let's say that you signed up for our product, and for whatever reason, at the end of the year, you didn't use it or didn't use it as much as you thought, and you just didn't want to go through the next year as a subscription user. We do give you 30 days notice before the subscription renews, but also we recognize that when things are automatically billed like a subscription program, things get lost until the credit card billing statement happens. And so for our users, if this were to happen, and let's say you said, we're not using it, out of sight, out of mind, which hopefully doesn't happen, but we realize there's going to be some percentage of people that does happen to. If that were to happen and you got your credit card statement, all we're going to say to you is, hey, if you're not using it and this was done in error, call us and we'll refund the money. We do not want to be one of those hard-pressed selling organizations who got people as mistaken clients for a year or 2. So I just say that because that's something that we get asked relatively often, and we want to make sure we appropriately handle those situations. So yeah, if there's no other questions, I just appreciate the time. And again, I'm happy anything that comes up offline to answer any questions you have. And again, our team is happy to do another demo so that another team member on your of your agency can see it and ask the questions that are most relevant to your specific agency.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Justin, and thank you for everyone that called in and for your participation today. Justin, can you just repeat your email address one more time in case folks want to get in touch directly with you?
Yes, it's justin@totalcsr.com, and you can also reach me at my phone number, 949-769-3101, 949-769-3101, and yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Justin. Just a reminder that this webinar will be posted on the IIAN website under the digital toolkit in case there was something you missed and you'd like to rewatch it, or you would like to refer friends and family or other agents to it. We'll be happy to show you through where that's at if you can't find it. But thanks everyone for your time today. Thank you, Justin, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
Thanks, everyone.